Hey everybody, my name is Daniel with Champion Industries and Byline, and we are the makers of the Vortex 3-compartment sink. And we are here today just to talk a little bit about basic operations and some things you need to know about using this machine on a daily basis. It just can make your life a lot easier. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have a fairly average setup on one of these sinks right here behind me in our test kitchen. So we're going to take a little bit look at the control panel and how to get started for the day. So first things first, I made sure that my disconnect on the wall, what powers this machine, is on. For the most part, you'll never really need to mess with that in case you get into a situation where somebody needs to do some maintenance on the machine, but that's a topic for a different day. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to this unit right here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button before I do anything. So the other nice thing you might want to do is just give the sink a nice little inspection. Most of the time that sink was either cleaned by the evening staff the night before, or maybe yourself the day before, but never a bad idea just to make sure that we've gotten everything out of there. There's nothing that's needed over in the kitchen that may still be hanging out in the sink. So once I've got the machine on, first step after that is if I'm about to go and fill this machine up, I'm going to check on two things. First things first, and most of us have made this mistake at least once in our lives with one of these sinks right here, is you go and turn the water on full blast and you go off to do something else just for a couple minutes and hoping to come back and see the sink full. But we somehow forgot to close the drains. So you come back to a sink that's just been running and running and running, and we don't want to do that because we don't want to waste a lot of water. So I'm going to come over and I'm just going to check all three of these sinks to make sure that they're good and closed. So now that I've got those sink drains good and closed, now I can go ahead and begin to fill the tanks up. Now's a great time we should talk about the pump system that we have on this sink. Now the pump system on this sink is an intelligent system that knows when to pump the necessary amount of detergent and sanitizer into those different sink basins. So one thing you may notice, again, in relation to some of the sinks you may have used in the past, is our sink actually has a little bit of a time delay on pumping those necessary chemicals into their appropriate tanks. And this is because we want a certain amount of water in there so that that can start to mix properly. And we don't want to run into a situation where we're pumping detergent or something like a sanitizer and there's not the necessary amount of water in there just for safety reasons. So keep that in mind when you turn the sink on and then begin to fill up the sink. It may take a few seconds or maybe even up to a minute or two for that sink to realize that there's a certain amount of water in it and then safely begin to dose the necessary amounts of chemical. One of the things we're going to want to check is if your sink is equipped with one of these scrap sinks right here. They have these inserts that will come out, and we'll take those over to the trash can and clean those out and then bring them back over, maybe give them a little bit of spray, and if we do need to scrub them out, let's use a soft bristle brush or a cloth to brush those out and keep those nice and clean. Now once we're done with that, so next we're going to move on to our wash basin here. So I've got these racks here that are for my sheet pans and other pans. I'm just going to move that out of the way. So what I really want to talk about now is one of the very most important things inside of our wash sink basin here is, of course, keeping the entire thing clean in between draining the water and filling it back up, and then as well as at the end of the day. But one of the most important thing inside this sink right here is down in the back and the bottom. And this is the pump intake screen or pump return screen. You may see it written a couple different ways. And it is absolutely imperative to never ever run this sink without this screen in place. So when we put it back in after cleaning it, we're going to want to make sure it's inside both of the tracks and then put all the way down. It's not much to it, but it is extremely important. If for some reason that's left off, things like sponges, scrubbies, other small items of any kind, rags, things like that, could get sucked down into the pump and impeller, and it can create one big mess, something we don't want to happen. All right, so at this point, on our control panel right here, we're seeing this little orange light light up. And so what that means is it's time to change the water. So a couple of quick steps, because the Champion Byline Vortex sinks right here is going to be a little bit different from maybe some of the other sinks you've used quite like this one in the past. What we want to do is leave the power on. If the sink was running, I would hit this button right here to stop the motor from running, but I'm going to leave that power on, and I'm going to go ahead and come down here and open this drain up. And so you'll hear that drain water starting to come out of there, as we can hear it now, and we'll wait for that to drain completely before we either power it down if it's at the end of the day, or if it's not the end of the day, we want to continue using the sink, we'll close that drain once it's completely drained out, and then we'll fill it back up. Okay, so we have just finished draining our sink, and as you can see here, our change water light has turned off. So at this point, if it's at the end of the day, we can go ahead and power the machine down, or if it's not the end of the day, let's go ahead and close up the drains on all of our wash, rinse, and sanitize, and let's go ahead and fill those back up. Now remember, throughout the day, there's really no reason to even turn the power off on this machine, because this is a smart unit, and it knows when the heaters are supposed to be on, when they're not supposed to be on, and it knows when there's no water in there. There's no point in having the heater on. So you can just leave that power on and then fill and then drain as needed as the machine tells you to. And then the machine will also charge with the detergent in the wash tank and the sanitizer in the sanitized sink as needed as well.